Hey folks, today we're going to be swapping out a caliper bracket, or as I called it in another video, a caliper cradle, but the technical name is caliper bracket. Proper name, I suppose. What I'm having trouble with is one of the slide pins is seized in there. That little ting was my dust cap falling off, so I'll have to put a little kink in that, make sure that that stays on when I'm done here. Essentially, this bracket here is, it would actually be like this, sits on the end of the knuckle this way, and then the caliper and brakes go on with it. And the caliper rides on these pins as your brakes are used, also as they wear. These pins are able to adjust so that you're not having to pump your brakes all the time to make sure that you've got good contact. So what I've got is I've got one stuck, and what's going to happen eventually, what I'm dealing with now is about a 20-foot squeal after this is parked for 3 or 4 hours. So that that in itself is bothersome. However, what eventually is going to happen is my brakes are only going to be wearing down the piston pad, the pad that's on the side of the pistons, because it's not going to allow that caliper to squeeze on properly. 40 bucks for the bracket, 60 bucks total with the pins and the boots. I did try with a vise and a hammer and all that jazz to break that pin loose that I've got hanging up, to no avail. Plus I did not have a backup sitting on a bracket, so we're just going to go ahead and swap it out. If you're curious why I've got two sockets here, these are spline, get in front of the camera here. These are splined lug nuts. As you see, the finish doesn't hold up too great on them when you're using an impact. The theory is that criminals don't carry spline sockets. I find that hard to believe though. But who knows? Maybe it's a good deterrent. They would have to get in my garage to take the rims, which there would be a whole different explanation of holes at that point, so we'll leave that as it is. There is potential to have this video be a brake lesson as well, a lesson in doing brakes. That is really crappy light. Let me fix that. In the wheel bearing video I did when I took the caliper off, you probably saw me use one of these. This is a dual piston caliper though, so if I was actually doing a brake job and was replacing the pads, I would use two of these. That way I could push, after I had the caliper off, I'd push those pistons back one by one, alternating back and forth until the pistons were already set in. But this really isn't a lesson in brakes, but it's how to get them apart. Bear in mind, I do not have the cap on the master cylinder off. Just by putting a squeeze on this, you're just basically pushing the pressure out throughout the system. And it opens those pads up so this caliper comes off a lot easier. And the pin that's sticking on me is this one right here. Not that it makes a difference, but there is only 2 pins. And I have greased them, so I'm not sure why it seized up. It's one of those things. One of those things that happens to us. By doing things this way by yourself, some shop isn't charging you God knows what for this a very simple job. There's only 2 bolts that hold the caliper in. And you will want to support this caliper in any way you can. Do not let it hang by the brake line. What I do is I just bungee strap it up to the frame. You could set a bucket upside down inside of the wheel well here and settle on top of that. However, that's going to make the bucket be in your way. So we just hang it like so. I'm going to do another little bit of a wrap on that, putting tension on the line. That'll do. It's out of the way. You don't want to pull your pads out of the way. I might have to get a screwdriver for that one. Sometimes your clips come out with it, with the pads, and you can see how dry that one is. There's no more grease left. I'll grease these clips when I put the pads back in. I'm going to take, since I'm basically the only thing now holding that rotor in, is this caliper bracket. So I'm just going to take a lug nut, run it in. It'll keep me from having to wrestle with the rotor while I'm doing this. There's only 2 bolts that hold the bracket on. The bracket sits in there like so. The bolts are on the back side. Okay. In lieu of this being a video, I am going to cheat a little bit and use an impact, I think, if I can get it in there, on these bolts. They do have quite a bit of torque on them, 150 pounds on these caliper bracket bolts. I'm going to get a universal. Yes, once again, it's chrome universal. Not the best of ideas, but it does get you through. Everything flew off on me. So as you can see, my pins here, this one moves as it should. This one on the other hand does not. It does not move at all. It's seized on there. You might be able to see some of the silver on there where I was mashing on it and dancing with it the whole 9 yards to try and bust it loose yesterday, but I lost that battle. So that's what the pin looks like with the boot. So bear in mind though that when you get the bracket, the new one, well, this is remanufactured. Good luck finding a new one for 2010. Remanufactured is all I could find, and they do not come with the pins. You have to get those separate. So if you forget while you're at the store to get the pins and the boots, well, you just have to make another trip. It'll make your day a little bit longer. Biggest thing when you're swapping one of these out is caliper grease. Get some, or any kind of, try to go with high temp grease on these pins. You'll notice there is, I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not, there is, yeah, a slot right there on either side of that pin, and basically that's for air to escape. But the beauty of that is when you do grease these and insert them, it doesn't allow all the grease to come flying out of there due to, well, physics and air pressure. If there was no groove in there and there was no room for the grease to go, it would just shoot the grease right out of there that you just put in. These boots are pretty simple, really. There is on both sides there's a ridge here. My light is not doing very good for you. There's a ridge here on the pin, and there's also a ridge here on the bracket itself. So what I like to do is to get them onto the bracket first. And you may have to wrestle a little bit with it. I guess probably the best way is to put a pin through it. Well, it went right on the pin. However, I want to make sure that I get grease all the way up that shank. A little bit of nose sweat on that ridge will probably help too. God gave us our own little lubricating system there. A little bit of nose grease goes a long way. Alright. I had to fight with it a little bit, but this, I mean, this is how it's going to look when it's done. However, I'm going to hold that boot now and pull that pin off of there. Maybe. There we go. Let's try this a different way so I'm not wrestling so badly. A little bit of nose sweat can can go a long way to getting these boots on. Boom. That one's on. That one a lot easier. So I will probably edit out the first wrestling match. Now on the pins, like I said, you're going to want to oil them. I mean, or grease them. You don't need a whole boatload on there. I like to do the whole shank. I don't know if that's what you're supposed to do, but I mean, it's going to get on there anyway, either way. Got her greased up, push it, and it's on. Same thing with the second pin. And the reason they seize up is they either dry out, they get some moisture in there. It's one of God's cruel jokes. You name it. It's just one of those things. It's a pseudo wear part. So that's it. That's on. Whoops. The only thing left to do is to put it back together. When you're threading something on like that, don't use tools. Use just your hands whenever possible. Don't cross thread anything. And those pins, let's see if they're the same as factory. I doubt the bolt size is. Sometimes it usually isn't. And it is not the same, which is ridiculous. So hopefully the old caliper mount screws are the same thread. If they are, I will be using them. Because God forbid you have a replacement part that's the same size, because next time you go to do brakes on the entire vehicle and you get to this caliper, well, now you got to go dig for a socket, and that's a pain. It is the same size thread, so that's exactly what we'll be doing. Is I'll be using the old ones on here. There's nothing wrong with them. There is no sense in going through the ridiculousness of two different size bolt heads. The torque on these, I believe, I want to say it's 148. I do not recall the torque on the caliper bolts. The bolts that hold the caliper on. For the caliper bracket, I believe it's 148. Which, you can do what you will. Sometimes I torque them, sometimes I just hammer down on them and call it good. Don't do as I do, do as I say, I suppose. In the light of public safety and liabilities and whatnot, I will torque these down. If you don't have a torque wrench, go get one. If you're going to be working on stuff for yourself, you want to do it right. Don't half-ass it. You don't have to have air tools for this job. You don't have to have air tools for a lot of jobs. Hand tools work just fine. I've used hand tools for a long, long time before I had pneumatics. These old clips don't want to come out of here real well. When I say clips for the brake pads, they're actually slides. They allow the brake pad to slide on the caliper bracket. I'll be right back. This one here is being a bear. Okay. I was able to get those slides out of there. Now these slides here, you're going to have, let me get the right brake. No, that's the right one. Your brake pad sits in here and slides on these inserts. Snap in. There's a little ledge on each side. You just snap in and that's where the pads slide back and forth. So you want a little bit of grease on each of these so that things can operate freely. And also the hardware that is your brake pad backer will also be greased, and that will assist in it not corroding on you prematurely. The top one on the inside is always the worst, because you can't really see what you're doing. It also really doesn't want to stick in there real well. So we're going to grab that one and swap it around. Actually, we're going to bend that a little bit. There's a little, let's come back here and get you in the light. You can see there's a little spring mechanism here. Not really a mechanism, it just kind of slides onto the, as you see here, onto the outside, and it creates a little bit of tension for that foot that's right there. And the trouble I'm having is that this little spring-loaded do-jobber is not quite tight enough. So I'm going to put just a little bit of a squeeze on them. It is quite possible that when I pried them off the old one, I opened that up a little bit. and I did it too much. They are fickle, tiny pieces of probably aluminum, I would guess, so it's easy to work with, but it's also easy to get ahead of yourself. Alright, that's sticking in there better now. And with my brake pads, since everything's dry right now, on the ears of the brake pads, I'm just going to put a little bit of grease on them. Don't go bonkers. Grease and brake pads don't mix, so you don't want to get any grease on the pads themselves. Pad number 2. That. When you're getting your caliper undone here, you kind of want to be careful. Don't hit your brake pads and let them fall off. They're durable, but they also weren't built to fall into concrete multiple times. Get the bolts over the ears. Now the ears over the mounts, I should say. And kind of squeeze them, otherwise it's going to give you a little bit of trouble. You can see here. So that's that. I don't go too crazy. I don't remember what the torque is on here, but we'll get them tight. I'll torque them off camera. And that's pretty much it. Slap your wheel back on, you're pretty much good to go. Do bear in mind that since I took some pressure off of these pistons on this brake, it's not really going to make a huge impact on what that brake pedal feels like when I hop in it and drive. However, if you've done this on 2 wheels or more, pump the brake pedal up before you start it or whatever. Before you even take it out of gear, pump up the brake pedal, because you're going to have a loss of pressure, and you'll find your butt cheeks will slap together when you do push your pedal and there's nothing there. But yeah, just pump the brake pedal, till it firms up, and you're good to go. That's it, folks. Hope you learned something today. Hope you save yourself some money.